When an airplane takes off, there are two critical speeds. They call them V1 and V2. V1 is the last moment at which the pilot can safely abort the takeoff in case they lose an engine. There's enough runway for them to stop. Sometime after that is V2, when the plane is going fast enough to actually take off. Although we don't usually think about it, that's a leap of faith. There is that commitment, that belief that we're going to be able to get from V1 to V2 and airborne. And it happens all the time. That leap of faith is taken all the time. I just flew back from California. It was a wonderful week. Thanks for covering while we were gone. And I have a whole bunch of stories that I will tell you about leaps of faith all along the way. But that actually never occurred to me while we were flying, because the people in the flying biz really have it nailed down. Every reason to believe that that's going to work the way that we want it to work. But faith is the substance of things hoped for, the belief in things unseen. When we have faith, it's not for something that we see all the time, that we have a natural expectation about. Faith, for most people, is about seeing beyond that. Now, the reason that I came up with the talk topic, leap of faith, is because I have been working at a full-time day job for the last 4.5 years, and Friday's going to be my last day. So, for a variety of reasons, I am no longer going to be doing that work. I'm going to be doing my spiritual work full-time. And that was quite a leap of faith, to be able to say no to that and yes to this, even though it's not really clear. What does V2 look like here? And there are all kinds of different possibilities. And what has happened is there has been a conspiracy of ideas and support and guidance for me. From the moment I made the decision to make this transition, the universe keeps on saying yes in ways that are small and ways that are big. And part of it's really easy to say, oh, well, that's because I was so well prepared. That's because I've been doing this work for as long as I've been doing it. Yada, 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 all of those things. And it's still really cool to watch as it happens. So last Sunday when I wasn't here, I was in San Diego, and we went to the Self-Realization Fellowship in Encinitas, which is the Paramahansa Yogananda monastery there. And beautiful meditation gardens, and it was great to go into somebody else's Sunday celebration and see the way that they do it from a different context with different language and all the rest of it. Same kind of message. And a reminder that there are lots of different ways to do this. In the middle of the week, I had the opportunity to meet with the director of the practitioner corps at Agape. We're a member of the Agape Association of Communities. They have currently 365 practitioners. I don't think it's because of the book or the days of the year. They just happen to have 365 active practitioners right now, which is a huge practitioner corps. And I was able to talk to Reverend Kathleen about practitioners and all the things that we have in common and all the things that we both know about how healing prayer works. And she has enough experience with enough different practitioners that it's not about personalities. She can kind of treat them statistically. So it was really wonderful for me to have a colleague and to get involved with and be able to say yes to each other, to be able to do some deeper work together and just get that reinforcement. And she, of course, is hugely enthusiastic about me moving into the full-time work and being able to grow what we're doing with New Thought Philadelphia and my personal spiritual mission. And that's wonderful. It's a reminder that the leap of faith is definitely worth taking. Thanksgiving, I met a family member who I'd never met before. He's my brother-in-law's brother-in-law. Yeah. Dina's sister's brother-in-law. Anyway, he's an architect. We really hit it off, had a lot of stuff in common, and he has a side business of a process of taking a desire for an organization and refining it into something that becomes actionable. And there was a reminder for me, I'm putting the websites together for the things that I'm going to be doing afterwards, and I remembered that another one that I have is life visioning, and that can work for a business as well. That's the same thing that he's talking about, but it's in a different context. So there's a reminder, there are tools that I already have, there are resources that are already at hand. It's the substance of things hoped for. So it makes a leap of faith a whole lot easier. I don't know if I told you guys a couple of weeks ago. I decided because this is New Thought, Philadelphia, and our headquarters is in Ardmore because that's where my house is, and I've always worked and lived in the suburbs. The only time that I actually worked in Philadelphia was way out in Manioc, where the radio transmitter towers are. And so I made a decision. I want to have an office in Center City so that I can be anchored in Center City, Philadelphia, and kind of own the fact that this is a Philadelphia thing. And of course, I don't know anything about shared office space and doing clinical office hours and practice and stuff, other than Hahnemann closed down. And so I asked a friend of mine who's a psychologist, what's the deal with getting these together? And she says, I have an office that I only use part-time. You're welcome to use it. So I went from looking for information to having an office, 1420 Walnut Street, right next door to Tiffin. I mean, how's that for a reminder that it's an opulent universe? So all of these possibilities keep on coming along, and with the suggestion and the reminder that the good is at hand. In 2001, I was working for a company that was part of a joint venture, and the company that I had been working for wanted to get out of it. So it was a sales organization and a manufacturer, and so they wanted me to go work for the manufacturer, and I didn't want to. And I just knew that I was going to leave. There was a software company that I wound up going to work at. And the guy who owned the software company, because I was very clear I wasn't going to go to work for the manufacturing company, he says, the most powerful person in the world is the guy who's just let go of the trapeze. Because you don't know what's going to happen next, but something's going to happen. Something's going to happen, and that's the leap of faith. Am I willing to take that step not knowing what the next piece happens to be? I go back from California. It turns out, if you wanted to drive from here to California, you could do it in the dark, in a car with headlights that only reach 200 feet. You cannot see the 3,000 miles from here to Los Angeles all at once. But what happens is it gets revealed a piece at a time, a piece at a time, and we can make it all the way there in the dark with headlights that only go a short distance ahead of us. Take the step. We are invited constantly to take the step. If we don't know how it's going to work, then it's none of our business. There are lots of questions that we don't know the answer to. There are some questions we know that we think we know the answer to. As I was dealing with an abundance of leaves yesterday, it occurred to me, would you rather have 100 pounds of leaves or feathers? Would you rather have 100 pounds of feathers or 100 pounds of gold? And most people would say gold, right? Because gold is more valuable. Because gold is something that's useful for lots of different purposes. If we're wealth building, then gold is much more valuable than feathers, so we'd want the gold. But then if you think about that, if you like the gold because it's got that density of value, then you probably want something that's even denser. What's more valuable per pound than gold? Well, it turns out, and I actually went and did some research, gold is $1466.31 per ounce, which comes out to $23,000 a pound. So 100 pounds of gold is worth $2.346 million. Platinum, I thought platinum was worth more. It's actually worth less. So we'll skip over the platinum. Diamonds are weighed by the carats. So the diamonds are up into the hundreds of millions of dollars for diamonds, for that same 100 pounds of diamonds. And diamonds are useful. Gold is useful too. Gold is not just for commerce and for trade. Gold is actually useful. It's a very good conductor of electricity. That's why the really good cables are gold-plated. There are certain people, myself included, who had teeth that were no longer serving them, that now are crowns that are based in gold. They don't do that anymore, but I still have a couple just for nostalgia purposes. It's malleable. It's largely inert, so gold is really helpful. And diamonds are very valuable and helpful as well. Commercial diamonds, very sharp. It's a good abrasive. They're a diamond-coated drill bits and saw blades and things like that. Of course, you don't need the really valuable diamonds to do that. They can do commercially manufactured diamonds. So it's the pristine quality. It's the allure of a natural diamond. Well, my daughter got engaged, and she's got a ring, and it's got a diamond on it because that's what you do. And that's wonderful. So you would think maybe the diamonds would be more valuable. But then if you're headed in that direction, there's stuff that's much more valuable than diamonds. For example, plutonium. Plutonium, $4,000 a gram. So that's $181 billion for 100 pounds of plutonium. So if you're thinking along those lines, if you're going to have 100 pounds of something, wouldn't you like to have 100 pounds of plutonium? Well, yes and no. I mean, there is the fact that plutonium is perhaps the most toxic substance on the planet. Hugely radioactive. It's pretty much good just for making weapons, and really big, noisy, bright, loud weapons. So perhaps plutonium's not a great idea. Which brings it back to the question, would you rather have 100 pounds of feathers or 100 pounds of gold? Well, it depends on what you're involved in. I actually checked the 100 pounds of feathers. You can buy them on Amazon. $204 for 6 pounds of goose down, which is $34 a pound. $3,400 for 100 pounds of feathers. And that's a lot of feathers. That's an awful lot of feathers. So where would you keep 100 pounds of feathers? Why would you want 100 pounds of feathers? Well, if I'm just in my walking around life, I would much rather have 100 pounds of gold than 100 pounds of feathers. However, if I'm falling off the roof, I want to land on 100 pounds of feathers. I do not want to land on 100 pounds of gold, even if it's really smooth. So it becomes context, not what's the best overall, but what's the best for me right now? What's calling to me right now? And that's the leap of faith. To move without necessarily knowing what the outcome is going to be. To be able to make that commitment with no guarantees. Oh, by the way, if you think there are guarantees in life, please raise your hand. And nobody did. But did you think that every moment of your life is a leap of faith? Every moment of our lives is a leap of faith. We have the assumption that we're going to be able to make it from V1 to V2, take off and make it safely to wherever it is that we're heading. And that generally is the case. We have the belief that there's going to be oxygen in our next breath. It turns out that's important. It turns out that's really important, and we take it for granted. We don't worry about that. I was talking to my daughter about millennials, of which she is one, and how sometimes there is an assumption that all of the technology is going to be available for us at every moment. And we were driving around in California, and every once in a while Google Maps would just say, can't find server, unable to get directions. And we're driving from Ventura Boulevard up to the in-laws' house, and we know how to get there, we know where it is, but there's lots of curvy streets and interconnections, and there are 5 or 6 different ways to get there. And if I happen to get myself onto one of the ways that I hadn't memorized, then I'm up on Mulholland Drive looking down over Los Angeles like, well, missed the house. Got to get back down into the valley. So just relying on that little bit of technology, we make the assumption all the time, but it's a leap of faith that Google's going to be there. And it's going to be Google Maps rather than Apple Maps, which may or may not get us there at all. Nothing personal, it's just the directions aren't always that great. How long will your battery last? How much stuff is going to end when the battery goes off? All of those assumptions that we make, that it's going to be okay. And it will be okay, but it might not be okay the way that we thought it was going to be okay. So we get to be in the moment and take the steps and learn as we move through life. And every step is a leap of faith in its own way. Sometimes they're big dramatic leaps of faith. Sometimes we get to talk about them and plan for them and experience them and have all of the stories about the ways that that next desire, that next intention that we're setting is being supported by the universe. So great to see Joe back today, and be back here with Joe today, with your new knee.
That was a leap of faith.
That was a definite leap of faith. You know what they can't do in a knee replacement or hip replacement? Put the old one back in. V1, the old one's gone. V2, new one's working. And there's that space. And there's that possibility. And there's that, we need to have that willingness to go through with it anyway. To know that in spite of all of the questions, that's okay. So is it possible for stuff to go wrong in our lives? Of course. Is it possible for stuff to go right in our lives? That's the more important question. When we're open to a new and loving and physical connected relationship, do we need to specify that it should be human? No, because sometimes the perfect companion shows up even though that's not what we thought we wanted. We get to find out in hindsight that by taking that leap of faith, by setting that prayerful intention, by inviting that newness, the prayer is answered. The invitation is responded to, and the intention is met. And then we get to, and sometimes we can't figure it out until it's in the rearview mirror. Oh, that's what I was hoping for, and this is what showed up. And even though this has nothing to do with what I thought it was going to be, this was exactly right. This was exactly right. And that's the biggest lesson for me when doing prayer work with other people. We love to get results. We love to have the prayer work stories about what the results were. But the less detail we can have about what it's supposed to look like when it's finished, and the more we can settle into the tone and the feeling and the vibe and the experience that we want to have. Once I have this wonderful new work that I'm doing, I could say this is what I want to be doing, but I don't really know specifically what I want to be doing. There are lots of different possibilities. Like that the new checklist software, I think that there are 9 different project areas and probably 100 tasks divvied up amongst them. So there's lots of things that I'm going to be doing. And any one of those can be hugely successful and captivate a huge amount of my time. And any of those would be okay. But what I know is how I want to be feeling. Because my mission is to be a beneficial presence. My mission in the world is to be a bright light and to let that bright light shine so that the people who are looking for that same light that I've found be able to find it. And I certainly have some ideas. I have lists of different possibilities that might make that happen. I don't know which one's going to be, or which ones, or if it's something that's not on the list yet. But I sure know what I want to be involved in. I know what I'm inviting. I have an idea of how I want to be feeling. I get to fine-tune that. And the question is, what's your next leap of faith? Is it just going to be your next breath? And I don't want to limit it. It's not just. Just is unjust. We should not say just. Because once your next breath happens, then you get another one and another one and another one. And those are the moments. Those become the hours. Those become the days. That becomes the life. And we get to bring whatever we want to life. And we can ask for whatever we want from life. And whatever it is that you're offering up, whatever it is that you're asking for, the answer is going to be yes. The answer is always yes. So be clear that exactly the 100 pounds of whatever it is that's best for me is on the way. And if it's gold, great. If it's plutonium, I'm going to be surprised, but okay. And if it's feathers, then happy landings. You deserve the best. So it is.
So it is.